I'm so glad that you're here. Welcome to Finding Your New Normal. My name is Matthias Barker. I'm a therapist, I'm a trauma specialist, and I'm honored to be joined by the psychiatrist, the world-renowned trauma expert, Dr. Frank Anderson. Welcome to the Zoom stage, Dr. Frank.
Hello, it's great to be here. I'm super excited to have this conversation and super excited to be with everybody, seeing people enter. We have 1,700 people so far from all over the world. It's so impressive. So thank you all for being here.
Oh, what a joy. Welcome. I'm just so grateful to be here as well. I want to let everyone know what our plan is for today. We're going to be going for about an hour. And we might hang out for like 5 minutes past the hour if Q&A gets kind of exciting. We're going to do some Q&A at the end. So if you have any questions at all about anything that we've talked about today, everything is fair game in the Q&A at the end. So make sure to stick around. Here's our plan. We're going to be talking about the real reason that we struggle with problematic behaviors and feelings. When you lose your temper, when you overeat, when you overdrink, when you just don't feel right, when you feel depressed or anxious. We have a thesis, and that's that it's not just that you need to get your act together. It's not just you need to focus more. It's not just you need to try harder. It's that there's trauma from your past that needs resolved. And we need to take a look at that. We need to get to the root issue. And Frank's going to be bringing us through the 3 steps for figuring out the event in the past that might actually be at the root issue of some of the things that we're struggling with most. We're going to make a whole case for that today. So we're really excited. And we have a huge announcement. I've been waiting all year to announce this, and I'm so thrilled. The Trauma Institute is pre-launched today. Frank, do you want to tell the good people what the Trauma Institute is?
Well, I am so excited about this. This is really something that it really been working probably a year ago when we were at the Networker Psychotherapy Conference. This idea, I think you said it to me first, if I remember correctly. It was like, you know, Frank, there's a lot of great ideas here. We should bring this to the world. We should create our own institute. And I was like, yeah, and I have the name. Let's call it the Trauma Institute. It just kind of popped into my head, and I couldn't believe it. And I also can believe it because it's so right. We ended up getting the name, the Trauma Institute, traumainstitute.com. Like, it is ours to own, to give to everyone, to bring trauma healing to the world. And this is for therapists, this is for coaches, this is for the general public. We're going to have different arms of it, and we are going to do something that I really believe, Matthias, no one has done before, is integrate and synthesize all the different modalities and treatments available, collate them so that people can have them together in one place, because I believe integration is the next wave for trauma healing, and I'm thrilled that we're doing it together, and we have a great lineup of people already interested in being.
Yeah, I'll just spoil it. We just talked to David Kessler, the famed grief specialist. Some of you know him. He just this afternoon agreed to join our institute. So he's going to be an advisor in our group. Many more to come. We have therapist.com, Pezzy. We've talked to lots of different people who have already agreed to just join us in this mission. So we're thrilled. I think, for those listening, we're going to have a lot of different resources that are coming out, all centered around how to heal from trauma. So even if you're not a therapist, even if you're not in the helping field or a coach, you're just someone here because you want to know how to go through your own stuff. You want to be more connected to your family, to your loved ones, to your kids, to your partner. That's what we're here for. Okay, so there's so much that we could say on that front, but let's go ahead and just get to the content, get to the good stuff. Here's kind of what we're going to go towards. We're going to be talking about these 3 steps, right, for getting to the root of traumatic experience, the thing that could be holding us back. We're also going to be talking about our first offering from the Trauma Institute. And so we actually created a course called Beyond Trauma, Transforming the Silent Impact of Early Life Experiences on Relationships. And then there's a surprise bonus at the end as well, which is super exciting. So we're going to tell you a bit about that towards the end. Make sure to stick around. We have a Q&A at the end of today, so we're going to be in for a really fun hour. We're just thrilled to be here. So let's start with this. Here's the problem that we're facing and what we're going to be addressing tonight. We have behaviors that are preventing us from feeling present, connected, in our most meaningful relationships. When people come into counseling with me and I ask them why they're coming to counseling, sometimes I'll get the answer, because I want to process my trauma. And I'm like, okay, but why? Why do you want to process? No one just wants to go back and relive all the terrible things you've been through in your life, or even just some of the overwhelming things in your life. Some people here might be like, well, I don't know. I'm not maybe someone who would identify as like, I've been through trauma. I mean, I've been through my fair share of unpleasant things just like anybody, but I wasn't abused or anything. But the reality is, like, regardless, I'll ask them back. I'm like, well, why do you want to go back and think through all that stuff? And the reason is because, well, it's getting in the way of the things that matter most to you. It's like, I'm trying to like just live my life, but I have this crippling anxiety, or I have an addiction that I can't seem to quit. I drink too much, or maybe there's this depression, this cloud that just weighs over me, and I wish I wasn't this depressed. I wish I wasn't this stressed. I wish I didn't lose my temper at my kids or at my partner or at my work. Like, I wish that I wasn't such a people pleaser. I wish I could just set boundaries and hold to them, that I stopped like welcoming in toxic people into my life. I wish I wasn't just so numb. I want to be present, but I don't feel anything sometimes. Anybody so far? It's like we have this way that we want to feel, and then we have what we actually feel. And there's this gap in between. We want to feel calm, self-confident, peaceful, emotionally full, confident, happy, but what we actually feel is our temper, our people-pleasing, our addiction, the depression, the thing we try to stop. And that's usually what we try to fill this gap with, to try to get from A to B. We try harder, and we just put up more effort. We try to work up this fervent, like, this disciplined desire of like, I'm gonna do better this time. I want to break the cycle. I don't want to be the same parent my parent was. I don't want my kid to grow up this way. I don't want my employees to feel this way. I don't want to be in a toxic relationship again. But when we try harder and then we fall and it doesn't work out, it leaves us just feeling disconnected, hopeless, and it just feeds our insecurity. Like, every time I try to make a positive difference, it just doesn't work out. I mean, I think everyone right now at the end of January, there's probably a large percentage of us who kind of created some New Year's resolutions. Frank, I see you smiling right now. That's kind of the season, right?
Tis the season. That's exactly right. Those New Year's resolutions, those attempts at making it different are kind of falling apart right now, and people are feeling bad about those overrides, those managing ways to move forward that really don't work. Good intention, not good outcome.
Yeah. Well, when we get these negative outcomes, sometimes we're trying to reach out to other people. We're trying to kind of like get just a little bit of encouragement, and people are really quick to kind of offer some solutions. But, whatever they are, whether it's you need to just, optimize your morning routine. Have you tried cold plunges? Like, whatever people are trying to push on you, it feels a little bit hopeless, because the problem with these solutions that people keep offering is that these dreams really just don't feel attainable in the first place. So being this perfect parent, having this dream relationship, not feeling so stressed out all the time, being able to get to sleep and wake up feeling rested, what in the world? That doesn't feel attainable. And then it's like what's required to get there doesn't feel achievable. Getting up in the morning, going to the gym, eating healthy, picking out all this whatever. Or it just takes too much time, effort, and steady perseverance that we just honestly don't have. Some people, I guess, just have like the grit to be able to get through it. We end up feeling like we don't. And so then we're left coping the best way we know how, trying not to think about it. We're soothing our emotions with destructive behaviors, or we manage our emotions or our surroundings, the people in our life, in a controlling, anxious, ill-tempered way. So here's our solution. Here's what we're going to propose. We got to get to the root behind these problematic behaviors. We can't just try to control them. It's not just about making them go away. It's about getting to the root of why they were there in the first place. All right? These problematic behaviors, they're rooted in past experiences that were overwhelming, that we didn't know how to cope with, whether you would title them traumatic or not. They were overwhelming, and we didn't know what to do at the time, and things carry on into the present day that are rooted in the past. Let's go for an example just to kind of try to make all this make sense for a second. So Natalie is in an unhappy marriage. She knows that her and her partner need to communicate better and stop avoiding conflict. But she struggles in sharing because, I don't know, she struggles in sharing her needs. She feels guilty for nagging, for being critical. More than that, she feels overwhelmed and stressed the majority of the time. When she does not share her feelings, it usually ends in a fight, and honestly, it just doesn't feel worth it to keep trying. Anyone relate to Natalie? Anyone had Natalie for a mom? Anyone's sister? Anyone's daughter-in-law? Anyone know a Natalie in your life? I'm probably the Natalie in my life. So
And I feel sorry for anybody who is actually called Natalie.
Yeah, sorry to all the Natalies.
Name. We're not calling you out. So just
that would be pretty alarming. It's like, wait, is Matthias?
Right.
Is Matthias reading my mail? Yeah.
Wait, I'm Natalie.
Well, Natalie, okay, so she's struggling. Let's think through this. So she's constantly stressed. She's naggy and critical. She's avoidant in conflict. She's avoidant of conflict. And then she feels guilty after. So she could just, try harder. She could try to control these behaviors. Just relax, just lighten up. Try not to overstress. Try not to think about it. Just have the conversation. Use an I feel statement. We could go that route, or we can get to the root. Here's what getting to the root might look like, using these 3 steps that Frank is about to share. I'm going to pass it over to you, Frank, in just a second. So let's say she explores the past. She puts together that she grew up in a home where conflict was avoided at all costs. And every time someone got into a fight, it ended poorly. People got mad, aggressive, or withdrew and got cold. So in all honesty, starting this heavy conversation on purpose sounds like a terrible idea. It is only going to make things worse. In other words, she has survival instincts from the past that are a mismatch with her present goals. Some of you might need to write that down if you're taking notes. The reason we're stuck is we have survival instincts from the past that are a mismatch with our present goals, right? Okay, so avoiding the conflict because life experience has taught that it ends poorly, that's stronger. It's a stronger force than I should communicate my feelings, right? So we need to resolve this, avoiding conflict, before this will change. I should communicate my feelings. So what's the first process? What's the first step in that process of change? All right, introducing Dr. Frank Anderson. Take it away. What's the first step? How would you put it?
So this is in the simplest form, I would say there's a way to take charge instead of managing and trying to control. And what I mean by taking charge is there are these behaviors that Matthias has been talking about, right? If I'm going to blame somebody, if I'm going to be angry, if I'm going to be controlling, if I'm going to be dismissive, if I shut down, all these behaviors that we don't like, that we're trying to get rid of, that we're trying to control or manage, I want to flip it a little bit. Like, what if we take charge of them in a loving way? What if we move toward them with curiosity? What if, instead of pushing them away, getting rid of them, or going on the internet for the 5 quick ways to override them, what if we moved toward them first and got curious about why they're there? Because what ends up happening is all of those behaviors that we have and hate actually come from our history. We learn them along the way. We don't just make this stuff up. These are the environments that we've been in. These are the maneuvers that we've been the recipient of, and these become our behaviors that are trying to protect our pain. These are the behaviors that are trying to protect our pain. And the reason people get so frustrated and it doesn't work is because we're trying to manage them. We're trying to push them away. And we're saying, hey, wait a minute. And this is one of the IFS principles. For those of you who know IFS and know that work, I have been a big part of that organization. Is one of the modalities for healing trauma is that let's move toward it with compassion and mostly curiosity. How did you get there? Why are you there? And I'm going to even say cutting, binging, suicidality, all of the things, the behaviors, the maneuvers. There's a way to take charge by being curious of those towards those responses. So it's not a managing, it's an ownership in a way that is collaborative, relational, and connected. Form a relationship. You know, most trauma is about violating a relationship. This is about preserving a relationship inside, fostering connection.
I just want to pause because that was so good. I don't want anyone to miss that. I just want to underline it and highlight it verbally. Just say that one more time. So trauma starts with a violation of relationship.
Yeah.
And then go ahead, you finish it.
No, go ahead. I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna remember it. Go ahead.
Well, you said it, so it's a violation of relationship. So to heal it means to preserve that relationship inside. And by that you mean that part of us that's holding all of that intensity, all that vulnerability, the pain from the past, instead of going towards it with like a controlling, aggressive, critical, frame of mind, which might have created some of that trauma in the first place, if we're being honest, with someone coming at us in that way. We go through with curiosity, patience, presence, preservation. Is that?
That's right. It's like the antidote to relational violation is love and connection. And we're saying have some love and connection with the parts of you that you don't like and you're trying to get rid of. And I know that feels odd to some people, but that is the way we open the door to the second step. Like once we can get in relationship to and get curious about, feel connected to the parts of us we're trying to get rid of. It's like what we do with our children. Changing them is not going to work. Forcing them to be something they're not doesn't work. Joining with them with who they are and what they're about, getting curious, is the road in for our kids, and it's the road in for our own internal experience. And that brings us to the second step, which is once you've gained that curiosity toward these responses, there is this, I love the EMDR. We're talking about integration in our Trauma Institute. EMDR has this great term called the float back, right? Can you float back to the earliest memory? When did this first begin? When was the first time I felt this way, or reacted this way, or yelled this way? So all you have to do when you're curious is ask, when did this begin? When was the first time? And what ends up happening, Matthias, is that images will pop up, a physical sensation comes up, a thought like, oh my goodness, I was 6 years old, I was on the playground, this was the first time. I was like, I hate myself because of the way these kids are bullying me, right? And something pops up when we float back. And that's the origin. That's the origin of the wounding and the origin of that protective mechanism. So we're always interested in kind of going back to the origin. And I know there are some skeptics out there like, are you going to tell me all of my problems are rooted in my childhood? Like, yeah.
Yeah. Yes. So yeah, period. Yes.
Kind of them. But what ends up happening is we push it away and we end up repeating it. We push it away and we end up repeating it. Why do I keep being attracted to these guys who are such jerks? It's because you had difficulty in intimate relationships when you were younger. Most of our intimate relationships when we're younger are with our parents or close family members. Mm-hmm. We have those difficult relationships, we push them away, and we seek a healing by reaching out for somebody else, but we end up recreating it. So once we get to the root, we have something to work with.
I think if I could, I just want to say, like, my favorite way to go about that process that you're describing is often through the body. And what I mean by that is, like, when I'm feeling super anxious or frustrated or super depressed, I'm usually more aware that, like, I feel this racing thing in my chest, like it just feels really tight, or I feel this energy running through my arms and legs, like it just kind of feels like it's rushing, or this like headache right in the back. I get these tension headaches. And then that's where the thought goes, when was the first time I felt this feeling in the body?
That's right.
And it's not always the case for me that I'll get like a memory, like a story kind of pops up in my head.
Yes.
If this time I was at the playground or this and that, like I can just anticipate. Some people are like, well, I don't remember a lot from my childhood. I don't have all these memories. Does that mean I can't heal? And I would say no, but watch what happens when you sit with the body tension. So sit with the rushing in the chest and let your attention kind of sit with it, hold that presence. And then you might notice that your stomach starts to hurt. And you're like, whoa, this is getting more intense. Am I doing it wrong? And it's like, no, I think that it's sharing what it's holding. It's like this was kind of the tip of the iceberg, and then it's going to start to kind of unfold. And then the emotions that you might be holding, the sensations you might be holding, might be more in the body, might be in your emotions. You just notice yourself getting a bit more worked up, or you start to feel tears coming down. It doesn't have to necessarily have this signature of a specific memory or visualization in your head. It could be a thought, a feeling, or a sensation. I mean, think of a root. A root has lots of different little tangly things off the sides of it, right? It's not just one big, bulb. It kind of spreads out. So sometimes even a few things will pop up, all kind of in a cluster. That's pretty common as well. Would you comment on that in any way?
Totally. No, I totally agree. And I think it's important for people to be aware exactly what you're talking about, Matthias, is that when we experience something overwhelming, when we experience being neglected or shut out or yelled at or bullied, whatever it is, our body receives the energy. So it comes in to us. The entry point is any sensory experience. Whether you hear something, whether you see something, an image that gets embedded. I'll never get, the image of so-and-so in the coffin, for example, right? Images, sounds, physical sensations, emotions, like that's how we receive it. And that's often how it gets encoded. So when we say go back to the origins, yes, it'll show up in any number of ways. It's not going to be usually a clear, defined story, because when trauma is locked in the body, it's not processed, it's stuck. So it's going to show up in fragment, and just be with that instead of explain it away, right? And this is what our bodies and psyches do, is push it away. So once we get to that root, and when we talk about attachment trauma, when we talk about early childhood experiences, which we're kind of moving, like, what do we do once we've identified the root? Like, what do we do with that? Right? If we think about these earlier childhood experiences, oftentimes we don't have words to attach to it. They're too confusing for kids. They don't make sense. Nobody explains, hey, I was yelling at you yesterday. I really shouldn't have done that. That's my fault, not yours. So when we're younger, we internalize it, we blame ourselves, and we take responsibility for what was done to us, right? So when we have that awareness of the root cause, then there's this process, which we'll explain more as we go on here, but there's this process of witnessing and processing those memories so that you can actually let go, transform, and release the pain of your history. We talk about it more in this course that Matthias mentioned a couple minutes ago. So it's a 8-hour deeper dive into this whole process, but there is a method to releasing this stuff so we don't need to repeat it, and so we don't need to have these behaviors to manage or control it. So I love this. This is why I love, Matthias, this concept and idea of healing. Like, And I would say I am someone who's gone through the process personally. I have a trauma history. I've done a lot of healing. I know you and your work and the way you've processed your history. This is something that we're just not saying theoretically. This is something that can actually happen. There's a way of releasing in that third step that does require sharing the experience to some degree, having a corrective experience to some degree, and then the capacity to release. And even like as I say it, my system relaxes. It's like, oh, there is a way out of this instead of that cycle of rinse and repeat, right? Keep doing and keep repeating. There really is a way through this that is different. And I love that we're offering this. I love that we're offering it right here and now. I love that we're offering it through the Trauma Institute. And I'm really excited that if people are interested in a deeper dive, there's more to this whole story.
Well, and I know that if you're sitting here and you have questions about what, Frank just explained, this is maybe a lot to take in on the first route. Stick around, we're doing Q&A for a while. We actually slotted out some Q&A so we can expand on this, make this feel a bit more clear if it's abstract. So let me just break down what Frank said in just kind of a quick run through. So step number one, we're gonna get curious about these problematic behaviors and feelings. Instead of trying to control them, instead of trying to shove them down, instead of trying to get them to go away, we're gonna actually move our attention towards them. We're gonna hold attention, whether that's in the body, whether it's a feeling, whether it's a memory. We're gonna just zone in. We're gonna float it back and get to the root, meaning that we actually go back to the origin. What's the first time that you've actually experienced something like that? And then that's really where we're getting closer, kind of, I think about it, we're going down the stem of the plant down towards the root. It's like, where did this first come from? And then we're gonna release what doesn't belong to us. We're gonna release the part that has to do with our history. And that includes a few different stages. That includes things like a corrective experience and a transformation that take a bit longer to explicate, but we're going to do that in a way that's really concrete, that has like tangible steps within several different initiatives of the Trauma Institute. If you're sitting here just kind of hearing Frank and I, and you're like, okay, I'm tired of just trying harder. I'm tired of just trying to control all these feelings and emotions and behaviors, and I'm actually ready to try something different to get down to the root of what's really going on in a powerful way. I want you just to type "I'm ready" in the chat. If you're here in the chat, if you're here like live with us, just type it like, okay, I'm ready. I'm done with the old thing. I'm ready for the new thing. Let's get to it. Yeah, hundreds of I'm readies. Oh my gosh, I can't even like read them.
Love it.
So fast.
Love it.
Come on. I think that if you really want to get to the root of what's going on, we want to guide you in that process. And that's this course that Frank and I have been talking about. Really, when we started Trauma Institute, we thought, like, what do we start with? Like, what do we do first with the Trauma Institute? And the idea was like, well, what if we start at the beginning? Like, what if we literally start at the earliest point in life all the way through and talk about what are the traumas that we experienced as young kids that are affecting us as adults? And so that was our thing, is like, what if we made a course on healing your attachment style, right? And we started to ask ourselves some questions like, what does it look like to get to the root issue and let that go through that release process, that corrective experience that Frank is talking about? What are the concrete steps that you actually take to create that freedom, right? So that we can actually embrace warm connections and all these meaningful relationships, the coworkers, the friends, the parents, the kids, the romantic partner. Like, just think for a minute. And even those of you in the chat, like, what's a relationship in your life that you wish was better? Think about your relationship with your parents right now, with a child, with a partner, with a friend, with an employer, with yourself. Go ahead and just write in the chat, what's a relationship that you just wish was better? I see family, myself, lots of self.
I love that. I love the fact that people have that awareness that they want a better relationship with themselves, because self-connection is one of the first things to go in early attachment trauma. So I love that awareness. Love it.
So good. Frank, I can say this. because I know you. You can't say this about yourself because it would come off sounding arrogant. But Frank has decades of clinical experience in helping people in this exact process. Frank, I don't know if you know much about him. He's traveled the world and taught clinical workshops for decades on how to heal from trauma. Some of you might know the book, The Body Keeps the Score. It's like probably the best-selling self-help book in the last couple decades. And that was written by a guy named Bessel van der Kolk, and he ran a trauma center. And Frank was the psychiatrist at Bessel's trauma center. So Frank was on the cutting edge of all the latest trauma research and everything that's been advancing, moving the needle forward on how to heal from trauma for the past several decades. I mean, Frank's been at the front of that. You were there for 15 years, I think, something like that. And then you were...
Wish it was only 15 years.
Oh, more. Okay, yeah, more than that.
It's more like 30 years.
Yeah, well, hey, sorry. A long time. Well, and then you were a lead trainer for the IFS Institute, and you ran the organization, the nonprofit. You were running that as well. So you co-wrote the manual on IFS with Dick Schwartz, the founder. So, I mean, you aren't going to really find someone who's as equipped. I know this is a big statement. I actually believe it. You're not going to find someone as equipped to guide you through beginning to trust more freely in your relationships, having less ups and downs, more emotional stability, growing in confidence with a stronger sense of self-worth, expressing yourself more clearly to everyone around you. Like, this is the process that Frank's been doing for decades. He's been guiding people through this for decades. He has the expertise. He knows this backwards and forwards. And we wanted to make a course that was understandable to the everyday person to encapsulate this. It doesn't matter if you can't recall a traumatic experience in your past. If you don't know, we're going to show you how to get to the root anyway. This simple course shows you how to get to the root issue. So in this course, let me just walk you through some of the principles, what we talk about. So we talk about the behaviors and patterns that may be signs of attachment issues. So difficulty trusting others, fear of intimacy, emotional unavailability, plus how to start to repair them, right? The steps to healing attachment trauma. Right, you have discussions actually that kind of trail off of that as well, like how to build fulfilling and meaningful, mature connections. We talk about trauma bonding and attraction, the surprising psychology behind why we're attracted to people and what that means for building connection. We talk about how not to continue toxic cycles within your family. Breakthrough techniques for more grounded interactions with loved ones, friendships, families, coworkers. So the details of it, like Frank said, we have 8 45-minute modules that you get instant access if you get it tonight. You can start watching it tonight. It's like a season of a TV show. You know, it's like you can just go through Healing Trauma, the series. And this is typically what Dr. Anderson teaches in a multi-day training for therapists that can cost thousands of dollars. But we brought it into the general public and translated it for the everyday person. And again, this is a big statement, but I believe it. It's like no one of Frank's caliber of expertise with his experience that's been in his position has made a childhood healing attachment course like this for the everyday person. There's been lots of experts who have created therapy trainings, and lots of people who have made trauma trainings. I'm not saying that's a new thing. I'm saying the content, when I was sitting in the chair listening to this from Frank, I'm like, I'm super educated in this stuff. I haven't heard this anywhere. And it was a life-changing experience to just sit in the room and be a part of this course. I want you to be able to listen in on it. It's a once-in-a-lifetime experience. So $597 is where we're going to launch it at in March when we launch the Trauma Institute. We're not going to be charging that today. We wanted to make a more affordable option for today. So it comes with a few things. It comes with a workbook, so you can actually journal through these modules, and you can have a note-taking guide. It turns it into something that's more of an activity rather than just something passively that you watch. It's something you can participate in. So the Invisible Wounds workbook is included there. And we have a live Q&A session that comes. So in a couple weeks, you can watch the course, hang out with Frank and I again for an hour just like this, and ask questions and get some answers to the different particularities. So here's the exciting part though. We have a surprise bonus. This was an idea that I brought to Frank. It was a little crazy. I'm like, what if we made a second trauma workshop and we just gave it away for free with this course? And so here's what we did is we made the Healing Trauma mini course, which is 7 modules that are 5 to 10 minutes each, that cover like kind of the arc, the upper contour of this larger course, but in 45 minutes total. So the 4 steps to healing trauma, this release process that we're talking about, but in 45 minutes. Here's why I made this. It's like, hey, 8 hours can feel like a lot, like jumping into like a long, big thing. If you're really feeling like a lot of intensity and you want some relief and some answers now, that can feel kind of intimidating to jump into this big, intense thing. But if you could like get all of that within like a 45-minute session, if you could just, kind of absorb it in a way that's a lot quicker, we thought that that would be, well, a lot more accessible for a lot of people. So $200 value on that, we're just throwing in for totally free. We're just going to include that as you check out. You just get it. So you could think of like the Beyond Trauma course as the comprehensive deep dive. You could think of the Healing Trauma mini course as this simple, quick relief that you can really just absorb immediately. And both you can start watching right after this. Instant access today as a part of the Trauma Institute. So for value-wise, you're looking at like a $600 value for the Beyond Trauma course, a $200 value for the Healing Trauma course. We do not want to charge $800 for this. We're going to be putting it at $297. And if you'd like also, it's going to be available for 4 days. Forgot to mention that part. So it's a 4-day window that you can get it at this price point. And then we're going to be shutting it down and then relaunching it in March. But you can also break that into payments. So if you want to do 3 payments of $99, there's no like interest or no like extra charge for that. If you just want to break it up, that's totally okay. So that is the course. If you want to go and scan that QR code, you can also look in the chat. My assistant's posting traumainstitute.com. You can look at that to get to see these 2 courses for the price of 1. Hey, how about that? Let's do this. While you're looking at that page, go ahead and check out if you want to join us for that journey. I just want to show you some reviews from last year's trauma course. So some of you will have the chance also to upgrade if you want to get the trauma course that Frank and I did last year and add that to the package as well. Here's what people said about it. I was blown away by how much I identified with what was being said, and it changed my perspective on how we carry and hold onto trauma and how it affects our lives if not healed properly. This one got me. Liz said that in listening to these heartfelt conversations, literally in this now moment, I'm experiencing a shift in perception, and old stored trauma with their calcified energies are being released. I just want to...
Let me add something here, because I think this is complicated for some people. And here's one of the things that I want to share with everyone around our mission here at the Trauma Institute, is there are many people out there who have trauma histories who can't afford therapy, right? And I and Matthias together are trying to bring this to the general public in a way. We're distilling stuff in a way that is often done only in therapy, and we're trying to do it in a safe, responsible way. Because I think trauma is a very dangerous, fragile thing. So if you're serious about this in a way, we're trying to make this as safe as possible to move through this journey. Like, safety is super important when we're talking about relational violation, right? Safety is super important. And we don't want people to relive their trauma in an attempt to heal it. And we want to teach people that there is a safe way to do this, and there are ways that you need to, when you need to reach out and get some more help. But our real mission is to try to bring this to the general public in a way that can help as many people as possible to heal. So I just wanted to share that with everyone as they're contemplating about what they want to do next.
Let's do this. Let's jump into some Q&A and actually get to some of this content. We're super excited just to hear kind of what you've absorbed. We're going to take a good 15 minutes just to enjoy diving into some of the particularities. All right, Crank, did you see a question that piques your interest?
I sure do.
Would love to hear your recommendations for kicking out of dissociation. I love the phrasing. Summer said, kicking out of dissociation. Been diagnosed with complex PTSD and pervasive dissociation. The first thing I'll say, and this was kind of part of step 1, is don't kick out of dissociation, right? Dissociation is one of those protective mechanisms. It's one of the ways we want to know that we're trying to protect ourselves from overwhelming life experience. So it is the moving toward it, not kicking out of it. And complex PTSD is exactly what we're talking about here. That's a history of relational trauma. So one of the things that I think about when I talk about neuroscience and helping us is dissociation is a top-down mechanism of protection, meaning we get shut down thoughts, feelings, physical sensations in that order. So if we're wanting to befriend dissociation, not kick it out, we're wanting to move toward it from the bottom up, meaning through physical sensation first, through movement in the body first, awareness of your feet, awareness of your fingers, awareness of your toes. Then move up the emotional realm. Am I feeling anything? Do I have any emotions? Lastly, want to focus on thoughts or thinking. So moving through dissociation and getting clear about it is a bottom-up process. Body sensations first, emotions second, and thoughts last. So thank you for that, Summer.
I like this question that says, how do we know when our trauma is healed? Sometimes I just feel so broken. I know I will never be the person I once was. I'm doing my best to use my trauma as a catalyst for growth, and some days are better than others. I'm in therapy, but I just want to understand what my triggers are better. You know, I was thinking about this on a technical level. I've been researching something called neurofeedback lately. It's a style of intervention for trauma and a bunch of other things, but people use it for trauma as well. And I've been getting my brain science studying on, so I'm sure I'll have lots of follow-up questions for you, Frank. Frank teaches the neurobiology lectures at the Trauma Institute or the trauma conference that Bessel runs and all that too. But anyway, what's cool to find out is like when you actually track what's changing in the brain as you go through something like trauma treatment or an intervention like neurofeedback. I think they've also done these tests for IFS, is you see new neural pathways forming, new connections forming. Like the pathways of the brain, the ways that you respond, the levels of arousal, meaning the levels of intensity, the intensity of fear, the intensity of anger, the intensity of threat start to shift. You can also notice that your hormone levels start to shift around when you move through healing from trauma. Your cortisol levels, the way that your cells respond to your hormones actually shift. The receptors that hold and interpret cortisol start to shift. Like, what an incredible body we humans get to live in, that it's almost like it wants to heal. Like, I've just become more convinced of that than ever, that when you look at the human biology, the psychology of the brain, it's like we want to heal. And there's things that get us stuck, and sometimes we get in our own way. And that's why we create resources like this, especially for people that don't have, world famous trauma therapists in their, neighborhood that they can go to for counseling, that want to kind of get increased access while they find support locally with somebody. It's finding those ways that you can get in your own way and moving towards healing and having hope and confidence that it's not just like a good guess that we have that people heal, that it's a certainty that it's possible. And that the pathway to that, of course, is going to look different for different people. Different people need different interventions. Different people are going to go there on different timelines. Different people need different things, just like anything in the body. Frank, do you have, I could see you brimming with a piece to share there.
Yeah, I love what you're saying, and it is, there's different ways to do this. And there are real neurobiological changes that happen in the brain. Memory reconsolidation, big old term, is one of the ways that explains rewiring the nerve cells in our brain through the process of healing. So there are physical changes that happen. But I also want to add, I don't know that anybody is ever fully healed. Like, I want to throw that out there. So yes, there's a rewiring. Yes, our neural networks change. We can create new experiences through those corrective experiences that we talked about. And we're always met with new challenges, met with different adversities. And what happens sometimes there is that our old trauma can resurface, but it doesn't show up in the same way. We recover a lot quicker, and we add a new dimension to the healing. So it's this constant evolution. I'm never going to be done. I'm going to be in therapy for the rest of my life. But when something from my past comes up, a physical abuse memory, I'm not swallowed up by it like I used to be swallowed up by it. I have a relationship to the part of me that was hurt when I was younger, and we move it forward in this evolution. So healing is an ongoing process. It's never fully ended. And each time you do a piece of the work, you are changing and shifting things in the brain closer to its original form.
I wonder, Frank, I want to ask you on this. I think about the idea of like the environment and the world that we live in and how it tests us and stresses us and pushes us. It's like these new experiences that I go through in life, they kind of pull on me in different ways. And sometimes that does bring up an old wound. I do the work on that. I find healing and I've come to new insights. I have new capabilities and levels to my character that come out of that. And then it's like I'll go a few chapters further in, a few years into my life, and then something else will come up. And it tests me from a different angle. And I almost think like healing, instead of healing being something like totally broken and shattered that we put perfectly back together and then it looks just like it did before, it's more like a building. It's more like something that kind of grows and expands and becomes sturdier and also just grows in depth. Is that a better analogy for it? Would you say that?
Totally. I totally agree with that. And I think each time we heal, we have greater capacity to handle the next challenge.
Because you have a
So-
bigger mound of healing or whatever
Yeah,
analogy
you
calls
have
for.
more space, you're kind of more aligned, more connected, and you can meet the next challenge differently. That's certainly one of the things that I have felt over and over again through my own healing process. It's like, oh no, not this again, but I'm different
Yeah.
because of what I've been through. And so I'm with it differently, and I can heal it in a different kind of way. Someone here says, how do I work it says, how do I do this work if I have no memories from childhood? And again, we touched on this a little bit earlier, but memory is a tricky thing. I don't want people to think about memories as just like, oh, I was 6 years old on the playground, right? Memory is a pit in your stomach. Memory is tension in your back. Memory is tearing up at a movie when it's not happening to you. Memory comes in all different ways. Any sensory modality can hold a memory. So yes, you have memories, just not of the kind you're thinking they are. Some people hold all the details of the story of their history with no emotion and no connection to their body. They have the story, but they have no feelings, no body connection. The opposite is also true. Some people are full of emotion, full of overwhelm, crying at the drop of the hat, but they have no awareness of what it's connected to. These are all different ways that memory shows up, and there is a way to put them together so it's integrated, and we remember, but we're not as affected anymore.
Yeah, certainly. That's so good. Oh, there's a lot of great questions about the Trauma Institute. What I'll say is that in March, we're going to have like a full release of kind of the full vision. You're going to get to see the about page with all the different just pieces about who we are and what our mission is and how we're going to be approaching things, how we approach things, not just from like an individual trauma lens, but from a cultural trauma, legacy trauma, really kind of getting into the various experiences of people with disabilities who are neurodivergent, who experience trauma from lots of different angles. Like we're going to be able to fill in a lot of like the nuances and complexity behind really everything that we're about in March. And so you guys get a little bit of like a taste as to what's happening here, certainly through like the course, like being able to kind of jump into that first offering. You all are kind of like the first students of the Trauma Institute. It's like,
Totally.
You're getting in on the ground floor, and this is really something that Frank and I hold as a historical moment for both of us. That's certainly gonna take, I don't know, like, it's taken my full vision now. I see it taking my full vision for really the breadth of my career. So this is something that we're building, a movement out of. And to be here today on the first day of it is just something exciting that I'm holding, much less to get to share with you. So know that all that's coming. yeah, I could ramble about that for a little while longer, but I'll be brief.
Well, and just to say, in that integrative place, right? We're going to have people who know about EMDR. We're going to have people who know about body-centered therapies. We're going to have folks on our team that know about psychedelic medicine. That we're really going to bring together the leaders in the field to help us assimilate this information, integrate it, and provide it for you in a way that you can get that healing firsthand. So it really, integration is the key here. I want people to know that. This is not model specific. This is model integration. Let's see. Can trauma cause cognitive problems, including memory loss and poor focus?
Yes.
100%. Yes. And what ends up happening is that people don't realize that cortisol, one of the main stress chemicals that shoots through our body when we experience something overwhelming, is actually toxic to the brain. So the more stress you're in, the more likely your brain, specifically the hippocampus, which is a part of the brain for learning and memory, is affected. And it is, other thing I was going to say is that ADD, so the prefrontal cortex, is also affected. So people who have trauma can have learning and memory difficulties because of the hippocampus changes, and they can develop ADHD symptoms because of the toxicity of cortisol to their brain. So it's a very strong correlation between memory loss, distractibility, and trauma history.
Yeah, certainly. Well, we're coming up on the end of the hour. Oh, it was just absolutely wonderful to get to share this with you, Frank, and to get to talk through this. Anyone, here that's considering jumping into that course with us, I would just say that, we've been able to really distill down something really powerful, not just between how to heal from attachment trauma, but how to build holistic connections with the people in our life that matter most to us. And I just think that when we look at the world and some of the uncertainty and the pain that's happening worldwide and globally, people having meaningful, mature connections with the people around them, I think is the antidote. It's the love that we share with our brother's wife and our mom and our neighbor and that kid that, wants to come over and play with my kid, but their parents are weird. It's all the little people in our life that seem almost kind of mundane and normal, but the meaningful connections with all of them is actually the thing that ties the world together. And we think that, part of healing the world is healing your heart and healing my heart. And then the next step isn't just that, it's healing us and making sure that you and I are connected in a really warm, grounded, adult, boundaried yet intimate way. And that's something that we just believe will change the world. And I think that's really at the crux of it. Frank, would you close on anything else?
I don't know if I can say anything else. That was so beautifully said. I would just want to say ditto, ditto, ditto. And I do feel there's a calling for all of us right now. The world is ailing. There's so much pain, mental health struggles, and suffering and loneliness in the world. And I do think there's a collective that's happening, just as you talked about, and that everybody here is part of that journey towards moving the needle towards love and connection, because that is what heals. And we are creating this community specifically for that. And this course is the first step on that journey. So thank you, everyone who's been here, who has joined us. Please be a part of this community as it continues to grow. We can't do this alone. We can only do this in connection. So thank you so much. And thank you, Matthias, for helping me with this.
Thank you, Frank. Thank you, everyone. Tanya, Alicia, Emma, you're so welcome. Yes, Cassidy, Carol.
Julian, Liz, thank you.